Close your eyes for a second. Not literally, but come with me. Picture an old kitchen, cold floor, cast iron stove, a black pot sizzling slowly, and next to the stove, a white jar. Simple. No label, no ingredient list, no health promises, just fat. Your grandmother's lard. She'd take that spoonful of white mass, toss it into the hot pan without a second thought, and the smell that rose up was the smell of real food, not a product, food. And you know what's strange? Back then, people didn't have names for half the diseases we live with today as if they were normal. Fatty liver in children? Nobody knew what that was. Heart attack in a 35-year-old? It was rare enough to cause shock. Morbid obesity? You'd have to walk a long way to find a case. But then something happened. Someone showed up with a graph, and that graph changed the world. Not a cure, not a vaccine, a graph. And from that graph, that white jar became poison. Lard left the kitchen, and in its place came a clear bottle with golden, shiny oil. Heart healthy, that's what the label said. But here's the question nobody asked at the time. If we threw out the poison and brought the medicine into our homes, why in the years that followed did heart disease not go down? Why didn't obesity retreat? Why did we get sicker after the switch? That question has an answer, and it's an uncomfortable one. Stay with me, because what I'm going to show you in the next few minutes is not a theory, not an internet trend. It's science with names, dates, and sources. And it's the kind of thing that, once you find out, makes you look at your kitchen cabinet with different eyes. Let's go back to the graph. The name of the man who created it is Ancel, an American scientist, University of Minnesota. In 1953, he published an analysis showing an almost perfect correlation. The more saturated fat a country consumes, the more deaths from heart disease. The press loved it. The vegetable oil industry loved it even more, and the world started to believe. But what they didn't tell you is that at the time, data was available from 22 countries, not 7, 22. And when you include all the countries in the analysis, the correlation between fat and heart disease weakened dramatically. Countries that ate a lot of saturated fat but had little heart disease simply vanished from the original analysis. It wasn't a calculation error, it was a choice. And there's another layer to this story, a layer that was documented and published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, in 2016. Internal documents revealed that the Sugar Research Foundation paid Harvard researchers to publish studies downplaying sugar's role in heart disease, while all the blame was placed on saturated fat. This is not a conspiracy theory. These are documents. These are receipts. They are published in the scientific literature with names and dates. And so, for decades, the narrative solidified. Animal fat is poison. Vegetable oil is health. But wait, if vegetable oil is so safe, what happens to it when you heat it? Because this is where the story starts to get disturbing. Soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, all of them are rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids. And polyunsaturated molecules have one characteristic: they are unstable. When you heat this type of fat, oxygen begins to break these molecules apart, and those pieces have a name: aldehydes. A review published on PubMed in 2025 identified the main toxic aldehydes released during frying with vegetable oils: acrolein, acetaldehyde, formaldehyde, and one that deserves special attention, 4-HNE, 4-hydroxynonenal. Remember that name. Researchers monitored the formation of 4-HNE in soybean oil heated to 185 degrees Celsius, a normal frying temperature. In just 2 hours of heating, the compound was already present, and the concentration kept rising for up to 6 hours. 4-HNE is described in the scientific literature as mutagenic and cytotoxic. That means it has the potential to damage DNA and kill cells. And you know where this compound ends up? In the French fries you eat, in the breaded chicken at lunch, in the scrambled eggs made in oil that's been sitting in the pan for 2 days. But here's the part I most want to show you. Lard, when heated, does not produce 4-HNE at relevant levels because it is made up of approximately 46% monounsaturated fats and 37% saturated fats, stable molecules that can handle heat without breaking down, without oxidizing, without releasing toxic compounds into your kitchen air. So how did we get to the point of saying lard is the problem? Think about it. You wake up in the morning. You grab the pan. You pour in 2 tablespoons of soybean oil. You make your eggs. You think you're making the right choice. You've heard that your whole life. You've taught it to your kids. And meanwhile, in that pan, a silent chemical reaction is taking place. The oil heats. The unstable molecules start to break apart. Aldehydes form. Some rise in the vapor and you breathe them. Others stay in the food and you swallow them. And you feel nothing. No strong smell. No warning sign. That's exactly what makes this process dangerous. It's silent. Science calls this low-grade chronic inflammation. It's not a heart attack that happens one afternoon. It's a slow process. Months, years, decades of small cellular injuries that accumulate. Joint pain that appears out of nowhere. Fatigue that won't go away even with a good night's sleep. That heavy body feeling that you chalk up to aging. But there's another dimension to this story that goes beyond chemistry. It's the dimension of trust. You trusted. You went to a doctor's appointment and were told to avoid animal fat. You went to the supermarket and chose the oil that said heart healthy on the package. You did what you were told was right. You threw out the lard. And the vegetable oil industry grew. The profits grew. And heart disease kept being the leading cause of death in the world. There's a study that bothers me every time I think about it. The Minnesota Coronary Survey, conducted by Ancel himself, the largest controlled experiment he ever carried. The results were finalized in the 1970s and were buried for decades. When the data was finally recovered and published in 2016, the finding was the opposite of what Keyes preached. Replacing saturated fat with vegetable oils increased mortality among the participants. The biggest advocate for swapping animal fat for vegetable oil had data that contradicted his own theory, and that data was kept hidden. But I still haven't told you the most important part, because up to this point you might be thinking, okay, vegetable oil has problems, but lard must have its risks too, right? Yes, it does, and I need to be honest with you about that. Lard is not a magic solution. The relationship between saturated fat and cardiovascular risk is still debated in science. Meta-analyses show mixed results. If you have diabetes, severe insulin resistance, or a family history of heart disease, consuming saturated fat in excess may not be the best choice for your specific situation. Talk to whoever manages your health before changing anything. But that is very different from saying lard is poison, and it's very different from saying soybean oil is healthy. The question is not which of the two fats is perfect. The question is what science found when it actually started looking. So what does the science really say? Vegetable oils rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids, soybean, sunflower, corn, when subjected to high temperatures, release toxic compounds documented in the scientific literature. This process is accelerated when oil is reused, and the compounds released, especially 4-HNE and acrolein, are associated in research with cellular damage, inflammation, and increased risk of chronic disease. Lard, due to its fatty acid composition, is thermally more stable. It doesn't oxidize the same way, it doesn't release the same compounds, and it is not the deadly food we spent decades believing it was. But there is a third option that science consistently places at the top: extra virgin olive oil.
rich in polyphenols that protect the molecule during heating, stable up to domestic frying temperatures, anti-inflammatory by nature, suitable for virtually any metabolic profile. The research on the cardiovascular benefits of extra virgin olive oil is among the most solid in modern nutrition. But here's what I want you to take away after this video ends. Not a list of what to eat and what to avoid, it's a question. When was the last time you questioned a nutritional fact you accept as truth? When was the last time you thought, who benefits if I believe this? Lard spent decades being called poison. Soybean oil spent decades being called healthy. And the people who paid for that narrative shift spent decades profiting from it. That doesn't mean all health information is a lie. It doesn't mean you should distrust everything. It means it's